Good evening. Welcome to our call. I'm Lori Davies, National Marketing Director in the Houston, Texas area, and I'm glad to have you join us. We have Dr. Roger Mueller, who has going to share his knowledge. He's an orthopedic surgeon from Oklahoma City. He actually graduated from Baylor College of Medicine and did his residency in orthopedic surgery at the University of Oklahoma. He was the chief of orthopedics and the chief of staff at Mercy Health Center. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. He's recently retired, and he and his wife, Nancy, like I said, reside in Oklahoma City, and he has got two daughters, one in Asheville, North Carolina, and one in the Houston area, and he's got two grandchildren, Jesse, who's 20 and is into music, and Charlie, who is 13, a granddaughter, and she is into horses. So we really appreciate Dr. Mueller coming to share his heart and his wisdom. He is brilliant, and you will get a good feeling for the research and the details that help make Juice Plus really important to us and how nutrition feeds our body. So, Dr. Mueller, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Lori. As Lori said, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, so you might wonder a little bit about why I'm talking about nutrition. It's a pretty good question to ask yourself, because as an orthopedist, I never did understand anything about nutrition and got no training in it at all. And I went to the pretty good medical school at Baylor down there, and my nutrition training there was so good that I thought bologna sandwiches and hot dogs were pretty good meals, because that's what I was living on during all those years. At our orthopedic meetings, we learned how to set fractures and replace hips and knees, but nutrition, and in our academy meetings throughout the years, we have tons of opportunities for continuing education, but none of them involved nutrition. And about 20 years ago, a friend of my wife's base business, because her husband had some difficulties with the oil industry in Oklahoma back then, and she wanted me to look at this company that was making an issue about eating 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. And she thought because of my medical training, I would know something about it. Little did she know that my training was very poor in that area. But because of her desire to not get involved in something that would reflect poorly on her, I did some research. And what I'd like to do at this time is have you go with me on my journey through the library at the hospital on how nutrition can improve our health. And what I've come to learn is there's probably more power in nutrition to improve our health than maybe many of the pharmaceuticals that we've been giving people for many years. When you go to a library, this was a time when there was still the paper in the library. You have to go by the newspaper and magazine table. And at that time in the library, there was a article in the Daily Oklahoman that people were living longer, not healthier. This was an article about a World Health Organization study that says or has found that as we improve sanitation and infant mortality and things like that, people do start living longer, but with those extra years doesn't necessarily come better health. The AMA had a headline that was very similar, just a different first word. We're in the same boat. Americans continue to be living longer, but not healthier. And this Oklahoma's somewhere in the bottom of the list as far as health markers for states. And I'm sure wherever you are, these same kind of things are noticed by you, that our country has some issues with its health. We did notice, if you look at these, that these all are about 15 to 20 years ago. And you might say, well, technology's improved over the last few years. Cell phones have made a tremendous change. Maybe we're also improving our ability to improve our health. About every 10 years, the government does a census report, and this was the latest one in 2010. And that report said that between 1999 and 2002, the life expectancy of Americans rose from 1.2. Let me back up a bit. I thought I shared my screen. Do we want to start over again?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So the life expectancy of Americans rose from 76.8 to 77.2, which is a good thing, positive. But they also had another marker in that study. It's called the healthy life expectancy. How long can Americans expect to live before they start having disease, diabetes, cancer, arthritis, high blood pressure, etc.? The numbers were surprising when I first saw them. It was 48.7, and it actually did go down. So the headlines from 15 to 20 years ago are still holding true today. And the thing that you might notice in there is there's about 30 years between life expectancy, the healthy life expectancy, and the life expectancy. And can you imagine the resources that we are expending in that gap? Individually, can be a big financial number, but as a country, it's a huge number. And part of our country's financial problem is our inability to address our time in that gap. Why are we that way? There's many reasons why, and you can find this in almost any magazine or article you want to read. And this is a list of those: poor food choices, not drinking enough water, not getting enough exercise, a stressful lifestyle, our environmental factors with air and water, sleep, we don't get enough sleep. And our approach to medicine has really been treatment rather than prevention. And we're not going to be able to cover all of these things. We're going to mainly cover the food choice ones. But if you look at this list, you notice that almost all of them involve an individual choice by a person. We choose our food. We choose what to drink. We choose how stressful we are. We choose how much sleep we want to get. And stress is a big factor that's sort of hidden. If you just go to a little league baseball game, you can see how relaxing that can be, even for the parents in the stands. So we have this problem that depends on choices that we make, and these choices out as we get older. This next slide is these ladies are approximately the same age, and I think you can see that choices they played out later on in life in their health. Our cartoons are a reflection of our culture, and this guy's a little bit different because he wants to gain weight for the swimsuit season, so he wants something that has 10,000 calories. Weight person says that might be tough to do. Junior burger, not so hard to do at all. And this is Hager the Horrible. He looks very tired, and he said, I spent most of the day in my doctor's waiting room. Dr. Zook says I have to make big changes in my diet. I says I have to switch from beer to water. Says I have to switch from fatty foods to cooked vegetables and fresh salad. Wow, what did you do? His friend said. I switched doctors. Unfortunately, that's something that happens regularly in our culture. Well, I got past those magazines and newspapers and into the journals, and these are words that started appearing in all the medical journals that I was reading that dealt with the prevention of disease. And these are words that had not come up in date. We hear a lot more about them now, but back then these were sort of new words: free radicals, phytochemicals, synergy, oxidative stress, and antioxidants. But these are key words when we're talking about prevention of disease. I also noticed that about every article that dealt with the prevention of disease had in its open introductory paragraphs a statement similar to this one, that oxidative stress, or the increased production of reactive oxygen species or free radical feature of most, if not all, human disease, including cardiovascular disease and cancer. Now, when I read that, I did not know that the guys doing research in this area had identified something that seems to be part and parcel of all human disease. You know, we hear about its area, the Diabetes Society doing research in its area, heart studies in their area, and we're all fragmented. Yet there seems to be something that is basic to all of those diseases, and maybe to invest in addressing that would yield better results. I don't know. Free radicals, you know, when I was growing up, these were the guys that weren't in jail, so I had to find out what these were, and this is in the New England Journal of Medicine. I found that the free radicals, the hydroxyl superoxide and hydrogen peroxide free radicals, are products of normal metabolism. That was a little bit of a bummer, because that means if we're alive, we're making these free radicals that seem to be part and parcel of all disease processes. And in this chart, you can see that these free radicals, when produced, if something's not done about it, they do cause damage, and then leads to that bottom line of aging, disease, and death. We can't eliminate that bottom line, but how fast we get there may be something that's under our control. Now, it turns out that since these hydroxyl superoxide and hydrogen peroxide free radicals are products of aerobic metabolism, which means oxygen is used in the process, these are also called oxidants. So what can help neutralize an oxidant but an antioxidant? And that's why they're important in the scheme of things when we're talking about what we can do to lower our risk or slow down the process to that bottom line. I like to use the automobile to explain this a little bit. The automobile takes fuel, it binds it with oxygen, and a spark is the catalyst that creates a reaction in that engine that generates the energy and power that makes that car go. Got to have the fuel, got to have the oxygen, got to have the spark. As a result of that reaction, the energy is produced, but what else is produced? An exhaust. The automobile manufacturers know that, and know that that exhaust is toxic to that automobile. So they don't recycle that. They put it out through the tailpipe for the rest of us to handle, but the automobile doesn't use that exhaust anymore. Interesting thing is, it's a very fuel efficient car. You know, it gets 60 miles to the gallon, you know, uses a little fuel, a little oxygen, and produces a little exhaust. But what about the athlete car, the triathlete car that gets 2 feet to the gallon at the Indy 500 racetrack? They burn a lot of fuel, consume a lot more oxygen, produce a lot more exhaust. Our bodies function very close to this, or very similar. It's more complicated chemistry, but it's similar: fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. We combine it with the oxygen that we breathe. And we have enzyme systems in our cells that convert the oxygen and the fuel to energy that makes our brains think, our kidneys function, our liver to detoxify, our muscles to contract. Every cell of our body has to have this going on if it's still alive. And just like that car, that reaction produces an exhaust. They're called free radicals. We're a little different than the car because we don't have that tailpipe. So those free radicals, when they're formed, stay where they're made, which is in every cell of our body. And as noted with this car, those free radicals are toxic and they can damage the cell. You'd make it die prematurely, damage in the cell or in the cell wall of the artery that could lead to a blood clot, or change the DNA that could lead to a cancer or early premature death of the cell. So these particles are toxic in every cell of our body. The sports medicine guys have known this. This is an article that aerobic exercise, that means you're exercising, so you're breathing a little heavier. You consume more oxygen, you're producing more free radicals. which leads to oxidative stress and tissue damage if you don't do something about it. So exercise, while it has a great deal of value, also has a side to it that if you don't support that exercise, you can actually increase the tissue damage by doing too much of it. Actually, Dr. Kenneth Cooper wrote this book about 8 years after he wrote the book on aerobics. He started the Cooper Clinic in Dallas, where many fitness trainers get certifications. And he said in his previous book that the more you'd exercise, the healthier you would be. So he's recommending people do these aerobics classes on a regular basis, and people were doing them every day or several times a week, and instructors were doing them several times every day. He wrote this book because he found that too many folks who were following his advice were having problems with heart disease, high blood pressure, cancer, those degenerative diseases he was saying the exercise should minimize. And when he revisited his thesis, he found he had not paid enough attention to the role of free radical production with exercise, and that antioxidants need to play a bigger role when you're going to work out that vigorously. And if you want to delay the signs of aging and reduce the risk of cancer and heart disease, antioxidants need to play a role in your nutrition. Dr. Bruce Ames, who's a molecular biologist, wrote this in an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association. If you don't get enough antioxidants, it's equivalent to irradiating yourself unprotected in front of an X-ray machine. I put this in there to try to impress folks that these free radicals are toxic, just like X-rays are toxic. We don't want to have X-rays unless we absolutely need them, because they are damaging to cells in our body. Well, where do we get those antioxidants? Now, our body has enzyme systems that do a really pretty good job. Or if it didn't, that little infant wouldn't live very long once it was born. So we have things like glutathione and superoxide dismutase and other enzymes that function to quench those free radicals that are produced on a regular basis. We were designed, I think, to get some help because it's not a complete system to neutralize those free radicals. The best source, it turns out, to get those antioxidants turns out to be common everyday fruits and vegetables. Our grocery stores are just loaded with those free radical quenching substances that can help lower our risk of disease and can help neutralize those things that are a feature of most, if not all, disease. This is a poster from the American Cancer Society. Notice there's a lot of colors. There aren't any packages, and there's no cans. It's fresh fruits and vegetables. And the poster just says, reduce your risk of cancer, and was hoping folks by looking at it. This is in a cancer journal for clinicians. This stood out to me when I read it, that there remains compelling evidence that eating 5 or more servings of fruits and vegetables a day can substantially reduce the risk of some of the most commonly occurring cancers in the United States. The words compelling is what stood out to me, because that means the research in this area and the studies in this area are of such a caliber that I ought to pay attention to them. It's compelling. That's what compelling evidence means. I ought to pay attention that we can have a significant impact on our health by these servings of fruits and vegetables in our diet daily. Studies have been done on diet and how it might impact disease. This was on heart disease, and it's 34,000 ladies, and they found that their death from heart disease in the ladies who ate the least amount of dietary vitamin compared to those who ate the most. And they were divided up into 5 groups. So there was a relationship between their dietary vitamin intake and their risk of death from heart disease. Interesting thing about this article is it said there was no evidence that taking vitamin A, C, or E pills was helpful. When I read that, it bothered me a little bit, because the thesis was being presented that these free radicals neutralized would protect us, and that antioxidants can help neutralize those free radicals. Yet here, a direct statement that vitamin A, C, and E, which are all potent antioxidants, were not helpful in lowering the risk of death from heart disease in these ladies. This is a study on stroke. For every 3 servings of fruits and vegetables, there was an 18% decrease in the incidence of stroke. So if you had 6 servings a day, that would be 36%. So there's a relationship between servings of fruits and vegetables a day and the incidence of stroke. In the Annals of Internal Medicine, an article on stroke said vitamin C and E pills do not protect against stroke. Again, it seems to be that how we get those antioxidants is important. And when it's obtained in the form of food, it seems to protect. When it's not that way, you don't get the same type of protection. And this is other studies, Finnish men's studies. These are smokers. They were found to be at increased risk of lung cancer when they took the antioxidants, beta carotene and vitamin E. So this study demonstrated actually harm by taking them in these fragmented forms. And the carrot study, 18,000 smokers, was halted 20 months early because those that were given the antioxidants A and beta carotene had a 28% higher incidence of lung cancer and a 26% higher death rate from heart disease than those in the placebo group. So the vitamins were having a questionable effect. It depended how we obtained them as to the effect they had on our physiology. And then in 2006, the National Institutes of Health did an analysis of all the published studies on multivitamin and mineral supplements that had been published, and data, put it together and to see if they could come up with a conclusion of benefit or lack of benefit. And their conclusion was that the evidence is insufficient to prove the presence or absence of benefits from the use of multivitamin and mineral supplements to prevent cancer and chronic disease. And a researcher at NIH specifically talking about beta carotene supplements, but in view of that last study, I think it applies to all mineral supplementations, that they're somewhere between useless and harmful. If it's useless, then it's a pocketbook issue and you can decide what you want to do with your resources. But if it's harmful, you might want to rethink your position on that. These are NutriCircles, a group out of University of Texas, analyzed the nutrient, presented them in these circles. And the spokes of the wheels are how far out they go is the amount of those nutrients. And on your left is a raw spinach. And you can see it has a lot of spokes to that wheel and they go pretty far out. So it's what's called a nutrient-dense food. It's a food that we ought to eat every chance we can get because we're going to get a lot of bang for our buck when we eat raw spinach. On your right is spinach that has been cooked. And you can see that that processing of that food has taken some of the spokes of the wheels and damaged its nutrient value. Over here is a raw strawberry. Now this is on your right is a raw strawberry. You can see it doesn't have near the spokes of the wheels that spinach had. But if you had a choice between a bowl of strawberries and a bowl of spinach, you would probably choose strawberries, right? No, spinach. But you can see on the left is what happens to strawberries when they're frozen. And these two slides just point out that the processing of our food does damage some of the nutrient value. So the closer you can get it to the way it was on the plant, the better it is for our physiology. This is from a book, Eat to Live, which is just a listing of the nutrients in 100 calorie portions of selected foods. And this is data from the USDA, just put in this table form. And 100 calories of broccoli. The first thing I noticed a while back was it has 11 grams of protein. That made me scratch my head a little bit because whenever I go to a salad bar and get all the stuff on there, the person at the end of the line says, "What protein do you want on your salad?" As if I hadn't gotten any previously. But it looks like there's a lot of protein in broccoli per 100 per calorie. But look at all the other nutrients that are there, the calcium, the iron, magnesium, all of these are good high numbers. It's a nutrient dense food. So every chance we get, we should eat broccoli because it has things in it that is helpful for our bodies. And romaine lettuce is about the same. It's got 7 grams of protein, but high of these other micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals. Same thing with kale. It's a very nutrient dense food. Now, the interesting thing is 100-calorie portions of these foods. If it's broccoli, that's 3/4 of a pound. If it's romaine lettuce, it's 1.5 pounds. If it's kale, it's 3/4 of a pound. But if you think about it, if you had a 300-calorie meal of those three vegetables, you would be stuffed. It'd be hard to eat all of that. But if you did, you would be getting your protein, you'd be getting all of these micronutrients, you wouldn't be getting the calories. Now, nobody's going to eat that, and if you add other nutrient or calorie dense foods like potatoes and rice, you can have less of a volume and increase your calorie intake. Interesting thing here is just 1 ounce. So it doesn't take much of that to increase the calorie count of a meal, but also look at the nutrient value of that steak. It's what's called nutrient poor. There's a lot of zeros in there except for saturated fat and cholesterol. Well, we've been through the literature, and this is just a summary of that. The literature points out that these fruits and vegetables have a powerful impact on preventing disease. And if we would consume them on a regular basis, the evidence is compelling that we could have that impact. But what about the folks that have already, unfortunately, have some of those diseases? They already have heart disease. They already have diabetes. Is there any evidence that maybe their diet can have an impact? And it turns out that there's a lot of that in the literature also. And I just want to go over one study. This was by Dr. Esselstyn, presented in Preventive Cardiology, and it's a 12-year study on people who had severe heart disease. This was done at the Cleveland Clinic, and the subjects that he worked with were folks who have heart disease that their cardiologists could do no more for them, and their cardiac surgeons could do no more for them. They were basically sent home to get their affairs in order. Working with those motivated patients, Dr. Esselstyn, just by changing the foods they ate, was able to demonstrate reversal of their disease. And I just want to give one example. And this was a arteriogram of the widowmaker blood vessel of one of the general surgeons at the Cleveland Clinic. He finished his operating one day and was writing orders and had chest pain and collapsed. Generally, he was in the hospital. They resuscitated him and took him up to the cath lab, and they did a catheterization and an arteriogram, and it showed this lesion in his left anterior descending blood vessel. And the cardiologist and the surgeons informed him that there was really nothing they could do about this lesion. It was too far, too small to bypass, and it was too long to put multiple stents in. So they treated him with some medications and just suggested he try to see what he could do. The interesting thing is that this surgeon was not overweight. His cholesterol was normal. He did not have high blood pressure, was taking no medicines, and regularly somebody who we would suspect is having heart disease. Well, he and Dr. Esselstyn worked together. He changed the way he ate, went on a whole food plant-based diet. He resumed and as a general surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic. A few years later, his cardiologist wanted to see how he was doing, so he did another arteriogram. And this is the arteriogram at that time, the same blood vessel. You can see the complete restoration of the blood flow in that vessel. And if you look at all the surrounding blood vessels, how much more there are of them compared to the original. So, and he has shown this now for 20 years in patients who are severe disease that you actually can reverse your coronary artery disease by the diet and the foods that you eat. So how come God put all the vitamins in cabbage and nothing in candy? Or I love it when dad cooks because we get to eat outside and there's not a vegetable in sight. Well, Dr. Shellrock, who's a PhD nutritionist, wrote this in an article that human beings eat food, not nutrients, and food typically provides an assortment of nutrients and dietary constituents rather than a single active ingredient. She goes on to explain why those studies showing differences in how we get those nutrients as to the effect they have on our bodies is related to a synergistic effect that's present in food. Synergy is when 1 + 1 = 10. And the result is greater of its part. And if everybody in this audience was a orchestra and you had the trombone and the bass drum playing the Blue Danube Waltz, you might recognize the tune, but it really wouldn't sound very good. And even if those two instruments played real loud, it still wouldn't sound super good. But if all of the instruments in the orchestra were playing, they're little tiny parts. So if you have the oboe and the violins and the trombones and the bass drum and the trombone, everybody playing their little tiny parts, they work together and get beautiful music. Our food, it functions like that orchestra. It has over 12,000 phytochemicals and micronutrients in it. And those little bits of those substances working together is what acts to produce the clinically significant effect, such as the prevention of cancer. And that's why a focus on diet, such as eating fruits and vegetables, is currently the recommended scientifically based strategy for disease prevention. Now, when I read that, I did not know that. I did not know that research in this area had identified such an effective diet on the prevention of these diseases. And if you look at billboards and what health institutions put out, do you see this on the billboard? Usually not. I got in the mail a couple weeks ago this, which says early detection is your only protection. You know, early detection doesn't prevent anything, but we have sort of equated that. The key and the goal is to not develop the problems, not find them early. And we have missed the boat by not paying attention to our diet, which is the scientifically based strategy to take for disease prevention. But I am eating fruits and vegetables. It's peach ice cream on top of carrot cake. Well, that's sort of a summary of my trip through the library, and to help this friend out, it does seem to be a valid a statement on a regular basis could help with our health. The problem I had now is I was getting up early in the morning to make rounds and then go grab a donut and a cup of coffee on the way to the operating room, a surgical case, another cup of coffee and a donut, and then whatever on the way to the office. But everything was grabbing something quick. And I was having trouble reaching that goal of those 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. I was probably not quite as bad as the picture on the left, but I was fairly close because that's the kind of food you can grab and go. I needed to go to the right. And if you really think about it, you can grab and go all of those things on the right. They just aren't available like they ought to be. I needed something to help bridge that gap. What I started doing is if there was a banana there instead of the donut, I'd start picking that out in the apple. But still, it was very difficult to achieve the recommendations that are valid and have compelling evidence of benefit. that time, Dr. Isidore Rosenfeld wrote this in an article that he recommends we eat those 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. But then he said, for those who find it difficult to do so, there's an interesting alternative, Juice Plus, a food concentrate in capsule form that contains the nutritional components found in 17 raw fruits and vegetables. The interesting thing about this statement in this article is that Dr. Isidore Rosenfeld, who's an internationally renowned physician, has actually represented our country in medical meetings, has never endorsed a name brand product before. So in this statement, he's putting his reputation on the line for something called Juice Plus. I had just spent time in the library trying to validate the concept of 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. And I noticed that there was no reference of an article validating the statement that he's making about Juice Plus. So I needed to go back and see if I could find any science behind his statement, because he surely has some good reasons for making that and putting his reputation on the line. I first found out what Juice Plus was, and this is just a picture of all the fruits and vegetables that are that poster from the American Cancer Society, isn't it? Multiple colors, fresh, no cans. And I want to give a little video here on showing how it's made. We visited the encapsulating facilities, and it's very interesting on how the Juice Plus is made. And this is a short video on that.
We're in a position to deal with the best growers in the world. And most of these growers specialize in a particular crop. And unlike what we see in the supermarket that goes through a very complex distribution chain and is probably picked a week or two prior to the time you actually buy it, Juice Plus produce is allowed to ripen and is picked at the peak of ripeness. It's important because the nutrient value develops in the later. And in fact, we deal with the types of growers who have facilities right there next to their fields where they can instantly clean, wash, and process the fruits and vegetables. And it's the state of the art in terms of preserving the nutrient value of fruits and vegetables. Well, of course, the juice then goes into our proprietary drying process. Everything stays very cold until the very last minute, and then the warmth required for drying is applied. But it's maintained at temperatures that don't damage the nutrients. It's an enormous difference between the quality of Juice Plus and the quality of typical fruit and vegetable juice drying. So the powders are then shipped to our final manufacturing partners who do blending, encapsulation, packaging. Their equipment is state of the art. Their certifications are second to none. And all of our manufacturing partners, whether they're growers, juicers, encapsulators, they have quality control procedures that we have reviewed and approved at every step of the way. All of our partners have their own labs, do their own testing, and they provide certificates of analysis that match our specifications before they ship the product. Quality control is essential for a quality product. And I can say with complete confidence that there is no nutraceutical or nutritional support product made in the world at a higher quality than Juice Plus.
We have been able to visit those facilities, and as pictured, they are top-notch, high-quality control facilities. The interesting thing here, this is a label for the Juice Plus Garden Blend, and it is unique in the nutraceutical field because it's a food label. You notice there's no warning labels because what it contains is just food, nutrition facts rather than supplements. And when I started searching the literature, indeed, I started finding articles that on Juice Plus itself by name, not substances in the Juice Plus, but on the actual product itself. And there's now over 15 years of published independent clinical research on Juice Plus. All of the research on Juice Plus is clinical, which means it's done on people. It's not done in laboratories or in glad it's actually done on people. And I want to review a few of these studies because it's the studies that enable me to recommend Juice Plus to my patients and my friends. If I don't have good, solid science for what I'm recommending, I shouldn't be recommending it at all. So let me go over some of those studies. We now have 36 peer-reviewed publications. It's the most thoroughly researched name brand nutritional product on the market today. The first study is a pilot study. And this is, to me, an interesting study because if you have a new idea, you want to get it out into the field. And that's where pilot study journals are for. And in this study, subjects just took the Juice Plus capsules, the Orchard and the Garden capsules, and they measured nutrients in their bloodstream. So they took blood from these folks throughout that month. And they found that the lutein levels rose 44%, the alpha tocopherol or vitamin E levels rose 58%, alpha carotene 119, beta carotene 510, and lycopene over 2,000%. This just demonstrates that the nutrients were getting into the bloodstreams, out of those capsules and into the people's bloodstreams. This is the data in a graphic form from that same article, and the red is the lycopene levels, and you can see these folks who were on the standard American diet had pretty low levels of lycopene in their bloodstream, but after about a week it had reached and plateaued in their bloodstream. And the difference between the beginning value and the end value had a p-value of 0.003. It's important when you do these studies to make sure that what you're observing is not happening by chance. If it's a coin, then it really doesn't matter. But if it did not happen by chance, then you might want to act on it. And in medicine, the standard of statistical significance is a p-value of less than 0.05. And that means if you did a study 100 times, 95 times out of 100, the results would have been the same. And that's our standard of significance. It isn't 51, 40, 95 out of 100. In this study, the p-value for that lycopene change is got a 0.003, which means if you did the study 1,000 times, 997 times would have been the same. Did not happen by chance. The green line is the vitamin E levels, a similar kind of curve, and even a higher level of statistical significance. So this just demonstrates that the nutrients get in your blood in a significant level. What's more important than that, though? Is there something more important than that? It's really important that if those nutrients are getting in you, are they doing any good? And in this study, that was also evaluated because these are antioxidants, and what are antioxidants supposed to do but help neutralize a free radical? And in these subjects who were all alive when the study was done, were making free radicals, and one of the ones that they measured was called lipid peroxide. Lipid peroxide, if you oxidize water, you get hydrogen peroxide, which is a toxic substance. And if you oxidize fat or lipids, you get lipid peroxide, which is also a toxic substance. And we don't want it circulating around in our bloodstream because those free radicals will cause damage if they're not neutralized. And in this study, as these other antioxidants went up, you can see the free radical lipid peroxides went down. There was actually a 75% reduction in the level of free radicals in this study with a p-value of 0.009. Again, highly significant. We would all like to have 0 free radicals in our body, but that may be inconsistent with life since we make them in our daily lives. The other thing about this simple study is that other researchers have shown that if we could get our blood levels of beta carotene and vitamin E and vitamin C at these levels, we would be at minimum risk for cancer and heart disease. That the group in this study before the study started, they all had blood nutrients well below that, but after only 28 days, they all had blood levels greater than that. This little simple study demonstrated that the nutrients from the Juice Plus capsules got in their bloodstream, not only in a significant manner, but the actual blood levels put them at minimum risk of heart disease and cancer, and I'll to increase or maintain these levels for the rest of your life. And since that pilot study, we now have studies that have shown that Juice Plus delivers key antioxidants that are absorbed into the body. It's at 18 studies that demonstrate that. And then from that study, a study was published in the American College of Cardiology journal, the main journal of our cardiologists and cardiac surgeons, on how blood flow is impacted by the foods we eat. Researchers have been able to demonstrate that after a single high-fat meal, our blood vessels have a impairment of function in that they will not dilate normally, so that that the blood through that part of the body may not be optimized because of the foods we eat. And they have developed a test to measure that. And they put a tourniquet around an arm, and they blow it up so that the arm gets no blood flow for a period of time. Then they deflate the tourniquet. And usually when that happens, the arm will flush very red because there's just a rush of blood into the arm. We did surgery on folks' legs and arms using that, and we noticed that every day in the surgery. And they, using a Doppler, were able then to measure how much those blood vessels dilate and how much that blood flow gets increased to that arm. And this is the data. They did a study that had 3 groups. It had a placebo group, it had a orchard and garden group, and a orchard, garden, and vineyard group of the Juice Plus capsules. They took the 2 of each of those for a month, and then they stressed them with a single high-fat meal from a fast food restaurant. A breakfast meal is what was chosen. And after they ate that meal, then they did this blood flow data for that. I put the circles on these, and the outer part of the circle is what the blood vessel ought to do normally. The inner edge is what it did in these subjects. And you can see the placebo group had a 40% impairment of the ability of those blood vessels to dilate after the tourniquet was let down. And what that means is if you have a situation where your heart needs to pump blood and the blood vessels need to dilate, it can't do it after that kind of a meal because of the effects of the foods that we've eaten. The orchard and garden group, but you can see the orchard, garden, and vineyard group had almost complete obliteration of the effects of that high-fat meal. It had the nutrients in the Juice Plus orchard, garden, and vineyard capsules had protected them from that effect. You know, if I was I would want to be one of those guys with the orchard and garden vineyard. I want my blood vessels to act close to normal all the time, no matter what I do. And in this study, the Juice Plus orchard, garden, and vineyard demonstrated that it could do that. And 9 studies now have been published that shows that Juice Plus supports cardiovascular wellness. And then in athletes, we talked a little bit about how exercise produces more of those free radicals. This was a study on an elite military unit in the country of Austria. It was a 7-month study. Gold standard means it's placebo-controlled and double-blind, the highest level of studies done. And in this study, 2 groups, a placebo group and a orchard, garden, and vineyard group. And they found that at the end of 7 months, the inflammatory markers in the bloodstream were lowered, which means their immune system was functioning more normally. There was less missed days of work, and there was a reduction in a marker of oxidative stress due to exercise. Part of this study was to exercise the guys in the study at a level that was 80% of what is maximally possible for them. These were an elite military unit. They trained together, lived together, eat together. It's very compatible and similar groups, but they put them through this strenuous exercise program 3 or 4 times during that 7 months. And during that time, they would obviously draw things from their blood, and they measured something called carbonyl protein, which is a marker of damage due to exercise of the muscles. And this is the data from that study. This is before the study started, and it just demonstrates that the 2 groups were of similar caliber. There was not cherry picking of good athletes and poor athletes, but they all were about the same. But you can see the resting levels of carbonyl protein were up around 0.3. Right after exercise, they went up to 0.5. 30 minutes later, it was still up there, but by 30 hours had returned to normal, which is a well-trained athlete. 7 months later, they repeated the study. The interesting thing, the test, the interesting thing is during that 7 months, Austria became head of the European Union. And so these same guys now had 40% more time on duty. Their workload increased. And that may be a factor why on this study, you can see the resting levels in the placebo group, the purple, were a little higher than at the beginning of the study. But with exercise, they went even higher, and 30 minutes later, even higher than that. But by 30 hours, had come close to normal again, demonstrating they were well-conditioned athletes. The amazing thing for the researcher of this study, and the reason why he delayed publishing this for about a year, was the effect that the Juice Plus Orchard, Garden, and Vineyard had on these guys, in that it completely eliminated the effects of the significant exercise program they were on. You can see that the levels of carbonyl protein were the same as at the beginning of the study, and immediately after exercise were the same. 30 minutes later, the same, and 30 hours, the same. I don't know if I was training for a triathlon or a marathon, I'd want to be one of these guys, right? Actually, even if I wasn't training for one of those events, I'd want to be one of these guys, because this demonstrates that I have given my body substances that can help protect it from whatever I want to do. And 12 studies now have been published that shows Juice Plus reduces oxidative stress. That study was done in Austria, so the last Olympics, the Austrian, Dutch, and Austrian, Swiss, and German teams all recommended their athletes take the Juice Plus. They could do that with confidence because of this third-party certification that evaluates the Juice Plus. And everything listed on the label and nothing not listed is in the Juice Plus capsules. And there's no way that Juice Plus can harm them as far as their drug testing is concerned. So an athlete need not be concerned to take the Juice Plus to help support his exercise program. And the Children's Health Study, this is at families where a parent commits to taking the Juice Plus. A child can get the Juice Plus at no cost for up to 4 years, from ages 4 up to college. This is a questionnaire type of study, and it is amazing that over 90% of families have noticed positive results when they add the Juice Plus to their family's diets. Kids miss less days of school, visit the doctor less, and an overall healthy lifestyle. These are the institutions that have done research on the Juice Plus. You are known by the company you keep. So these organizations do not want to get involved with something that would reflect poorly on them, nor does the Juice Plus company want to get involved in something that would reflect poorly on them. Georgetown University, King's College, Nemours Clinic, Tokyo Women's Medical University, MD Anderson in Houston, Würzburg in Germany, Sydney, Australia. All of these are institutions that have reputations for quality research throughout the world, and they have done the research on Juice Plus. It's the most thoroughly researched name brand nutritional product on the market today. And when you look at all the studies that have been done on Juice Plus and conclude, make a list of the conclusions, you can say Juice Plus has been clinically proven to be bioavailable. It reduces oxidative stress. It supports a healthy immune system. It protects DNA, supports cardiovascular wellness, reduces systemic inflammation, supports healthy skin and gums. This is an amazing list that fruit and vegetable in a capsule can do. And Dr. Du Bois, who's an infectious disease specialist, has written, after reviewing the literature, that there's nothing else available in the world, with or without a prescription, that has been shown to do all of those things in the human body. It's amazing when you think about it that fruits and vegetables are able to have that kind of impact on our physiology. Here, let me know if these work, and give them a try myself. I put this slide in for me originally to just get me to stop, because doctors have often not advised their patients to do things that they have advised their patients to do things that they weren't doing themselves. But as I've looked at this even more lately, I think this physician in this cartoon is asking this person to do something that's impossible when we're talking about prevention. Because how do you feel prevention? You know, how do I know what I'm doing today is gonna enable me not to have a heart attack 10 years from now? I can't feel that. So he's asking this patient an impossible thing. You know, we can't sometimes feel even getting sick. There's a lot of people who have high blood pressure and they don't feel anything. People have diabetes and don't feel anything. People run a marathon and feel pretty good and have a heart attack the next day. So if we can't feel some of those illnesses, why should we feel prevention? I take the Juice Plus not necessarily to feel better. I take it because the evidence is that if I eat more fruits and vegetables, I lower my risk of the degenerative diseases, and I will slow down that process to that aging, disease, and death bottom line. You know, the media at times does try to help us. It's all about prevention. We don't want to end up in that hospital. We want to live long and die short. And the best way to do that is to pay attention to our health and nutrition. Juice Plus inspires healthy living throughout the world with its signature product, the fruit and vegetable capsules, fruit, vegetables, and vineyard. They have a gummy form for children and adults they have a smoothie mix that's a plant-based smoothie mix and bars, and even a system to help grow your own produce. Best produce you can get, stuff you grow your own. You can pick it right off and put it in your plate, and it tastes the best when you do that. And the system does not even involve using dirt. It's great. When I end with another cartoon, this is Blondie. Dagwood and Elmo are out working outside, and it's knockoff for a nice snack. And Elmo says, sure. And Dagwood says, we'll have crisp carrots for fiber, raw cauliflower for vitamin A, and an apple for energy. Elmo says, oh, what about chocolate milk and cookies? And Dagwood, who's been to some course, says, no, fruits and vegetables are the things for. Heard them talking. It's got their snacks all ready for, and it's chocolate milk and cookies for Elmo, and carrots, cauliflower, for an apple for you, dear, just like you both wanted. And Dagwood's ticked off. Can't anybody tell when I'm joking? Obviously, Elmo's pleased as punch. But what this points out, a lesson, I think, for all of us. You know, I hope this this discussion here provided you with some information. You might even elevate that information to something called education, and even go even higher and call it knowledge. And we've all heard that aphorism that knowledge is power. But it really turns out the power is in the application of that knowledge. See, Dagwood here had the knowledge. He hadn't quite gotten around to the application. Learned on my journey through the library was that free radicals are a feature of most, if not all, disease. Antioxidants neutralize those free radicals. The best source of antioxidants is fruits and vegetables. When I started this, the recommendations were 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. Now, maybe because of the way we grow our produce and get it to market, the recommendations are 7 to 13 servings. How often? Every day. Every single day. We need those fruits and vegetables. So that's the source of the antioxidants. If you were like me and the left side of this picture and wanted to get to the right, bridge the gap, if you find it difficult to do so, to eat those 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, consider Juice Plus. It bridges that gap. It fulfills that focus on diet, which is a scientifically based strategy for disease prevention. Consider Juice Plus, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mueller. Let me see if I can make this. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Mueller, for that presentation. You talked about the application of knowledge, and of course, then the next step after or what application looks like is action. So I hope those of you that are listening to this today are moved to a point of taking action, and whoever shared this with you can certainly help you with your next step to get healthier, you and your family. I want to let you know that the Children's Health Study is an amazing study that has helped our family immensely. We have lots of children, and we were able to get sponsors outside of my husband and myself, so you don't have to, it doesn't have to be your own child. It can be a grandchild or a niece or a nephew or a next door neighbor, but for every adult that is getting Juice Plus, a child is able to be sponsored and get their Juice Plus for free, which I just love about this company, that they are so family friendly and helping families to get healthier as a unit. So again, thank you for joining us. I appreciate Dr. Mueller, you doing this. This was recorded. I know there were a few little glitches in the recording, but I think that everybody will be able to understand everything. I appreciate you taking your time. And with that, I will say I'm turning off the recording and saying thank you.